It is a college football show like none other. It is the college football show. We appreciate you being here. Another day, another swing at the fence, another day down toward the beginning of college football, week 0. We'll leave that up to our buddy Jackson to supply the specific numbers. We could do the counting. I believe we're just 9 weeks away from week 0. That sounds right. Regardless, once we get inside August, we're taking off. Even inside July, because consider this. We've got Big 12 Media Days next week. Then we've got the SEC and the Big 10. We've got the ACC before the end of the month. We're right off into spring camp. Yes, August camp, fall camp for football. All right, welcome to the College Football Show. We come your way Mondays through Fridays, 4 p.m. Eastern Time. We hit that mark just about 90% of the time. There are some days in which we've got to move the time or move the festivities for one reason or the other. So today, to accommodate our buddy Steve Deace, we're seeing you a couple hours early. Hopefully you get those notifications, because if you subscribe, hit the bell for the notifications, you know when we go live, even though we put out information there and schedules on Twitter/X and also to the community page. Check out that community page, because that is key. That's where you will find our watch party poll that we provided a couple weeks ago. So we had a watch party. We've got a watch party that we line up each and every month here at the Voice of College Football now. So we would love to watch college football with you during the offseason. Vintage, classic, usually recent classics, instant classic college football games. Ohio State, Michigan 2021 was the June selection. July, what will it be? You see 4 selections there on the community tab. Give it a look, and we will get together later this month. Sometime during the month of July, we will do the same in August. And then based on your support, based on your interest, the goal, the intent is to get together after every college football weekend from that opening weekend, August, September, August 30, 31, September 1, right in there, all the way through the rest of the college football season, through the national championship game, and to get together for a watch party. So please sign up for a membership here or on Patreon. It's easy to do since you're right here on YouTube. You can sign up for any membership. It doesn't matter what tier. It's a perk that we provide, a benefit to you, and a thanks for being a loyal member here at the Voice of College Football. So again, watch party in June. You can still watch that if you would like. Checking out Michigan, Ohio State from 2021. It looks as though we're going to watch the Rose Bowl from 2024, the Michigan win against Alabama. We shall see, though. Somebody else needs to make a comeback to unseat the 24 Rose Bowl for July, and then we'll have 4 other selections for you to vote on for August, and then we'll do the same thing throughout the season. This is, again, the intent based on your response. If we get enough response, we would love to watch college football with you each and every week. Do a watch party, whether that be on Monday or Tuesday, in response to the big games on Saturday, your vote on Sunday. We take your vote, we turn it around, and we get together on Monday or Tuesday. We understand that Monday Night Football is sacred to many of you. Maybe we do it really late night on Monday. We do it Tuesday. We shall see. But again, the watch parties, that's another thing we will ask all of you. When do you want to do the watch parties during the season? So just imagine this first weekend of college football. Forget week 0 for a second. We really have one viable game, Iowa State and Kansas State. But look at that first weekend with Ohio State, Texas, Alabama, Florida State, Clemson, LSU, and others. We would have quite a selection, as we will every week. So join the fun, join the watch parties, and we will let you know more about that. But make the vote for July count. So Steve will show up here in about 15 minutes or so, and we will take your Super Chat comments, questions directly to Steve. You may have something to ask me, but of course you can do that each and every day. So Super Chat comments, questions, we appreciate your contributions. You can do that as a specific comment or question. Also, of course, we welcome your Super Chats. Also, Venmo, PayPal, and Cash App is a more effective way to contribute here at the Voice of College Football. Venmo, PayPal, and Cash App. You can search us out at MarkRogersTV. Also, keep in mind that you can financially support us here at the Voice of College Football without spending a penny. Just go to Amazon, use the Amazon link when you shop on Amazon. So until Steve gets here, we've got the phone lines there in the chat. You can give me a call to talk college football, or in the meantime as well, understanding first and foremost that we've got a ton of commits, ton of recruiting news over the last couple of weeks. So we'll be here at 8:30 Eastern tonight for the On the Move show with Leanne Herring. So that's coming up tonight, 8:30 Eastern. And we are taking your calls. So please join us 8:30 Eastern tonight, a double dose of the Voice of College Football. Usually you get 3 or 4 doses a day of me if you can hack it. Earlier today, you may want to check out my dumbass predictions video. Apparently, I make dumbass predictions, and we just wanted to be able to correctly frame that to let you all know that when you're listening to my predictions throughout the season, beware, be cautioned that they are dumbass predictions. So maybe we'll get Steve's take on that as well. Let me jot that down. But in the meantime, while we're waiting for Steve, we're going to talk about his power ratings. Is what we're basically going to do today, is run through each conference, look at the power ratings that he has provided, because he has ranked and rated all the positions and all the various categories for each team across college football. So maybe to help you hit us up with some questions and comments, we'll show you Steve's ratings. But first, I'll go to the chat. Tukey G kicks us off. Jackson, good to see you, of course. Burks is driving to upstate New York. Let's go. Well, maybe some other time, Burks, we can go. But yeah, let's go. Yes, you go. And I'll stay behind for now. But I'm with you in spirit. Looking sharp. You may have noticed I own about 15 black shirts. It's the easiest. It's the easiest to, if it's wrinkled, usually you can't see all those things. So there's a lot of black selection here for me, both on the air and also in my personal life. Just the black t-shirt, and, you know, you can go gray shorts, black shorts, various grays, all sorts of options there. So, but Burks, hey, I'll take it. Jackson, 51 days until week 0. That's not many at all. And I tell you, I know this from doing this for a zillion years, a zillion at least. I think it's longer than a zillion. That once we hit media days, at least from my perspective, from my vantage point, because of how the news cycle is and trying to keep up with it and trying to present and trying to create meaningful content, that really once media days hits, and that's going to be next week, I think it's next Monday or Tuesday with the Big 12 in Dallas. Once that hits, trying to keep up with media days and just, did anybody say anything meaningful? So there's stuff that said is somewhat meaningful. About 90% of it's just coach speak, player speak, typical stuff. But there are some gems in there that could be hidden that are meaningful. And then maybe some stuff that most of you really get into because you like the hype and the drama, but it really doesn't matter. But sometimes I get to respond to that. I don't have to, but I choose to. Like being told that I have dumbass predictions. I didn't have to respond to that, but it was fun. So Jackson letting us know 51 days. And again, we are less than a week. We are a few days away from Big 12 media days, and it just takes off from there. Got the 4 conferences with the media days. And as soon as that last one ends, they are starting August camp. And we've got predictions that come out every day. I try to get 2 or 3 of those cranked out every day. So one today, I don't know if I'll get a second one out today because we've got much to do. Obviously, we've got the show here. We got the later show with Leanne Herring on the move, 8:30 Eastern time. Be here. We'll take your calls. So don't know if I'll get any other predictions out today besides the Texas videos released. So if you want to find out what Texas's final record is going to be, I'm sure it's a 99% guarantee that I will be right. Wink, wink. So anyway, we got our Texas video out there. We've released about 25, so that means we got about 45 teams to do. So I got my work cut out for me, especially considering, as Jackson is letting us know, 51 days until week 0. And then, of course, the next week, we got Thursday games, Friday games, Saturday game. In a sense, we should love opening weekend of college football. Not talking about week 0. Week 0, I always felt was really cool from the standpoint that you could be like, wow, week 0, we get like, I remember one year, about 5 years ago, Oregon State playing a Mountain West team. It was like Oregon State and, shoot, I can't remember who they played. Somebody that was supposed to be really good that year out of the Mountain West. And they beat Oregon State like 54-39 or something like that. It was that kind of game. And we've had a lot of Hawaii show up in week 0. I love Hawaii because they've actually played 15-game seasons without showing up in a conference championship game. They just love to play football in Hawaii, apparently. They play more games than anybody. Check it out. The Rainbow Warriors, they play more games than anybody. Okay, got a lot of things we want to get to before Steve jumps on the line, but we do have a call, and we did drop the line, so we'll get Caden here for a quick second. Caden, how you doing? Hello, Caden.
Oh, hey, Mark. How you doing?
I am doing just fine. What's on your mind?
Before I go, I just want to say, I got a few quarterbacks I gotta say that are honestly overrated in my opinion.
Okay.
Number 1 specifically is Arch Manning. Arch Manning, I've said this before about him. Everybody is overrating the guy because of his name and because of his image. He hasn't proven to me about in winning the big games such as Ohio State and Georgia. He's got to be either team unless he wants to get over that hump to win a national championship, to be a Heisman contender. That's my issue with Arch Manning.
He hasn't failed to do anything either.
I mean, he's failed to win those games. If he cannot win those games, there's at least 1 point there. Number 2, the quarterback I find
played in those games.
Number 2, Drew Aller. Now, Drew Aller, Penn State, he's a good kid. But if he cannot beat Ohio State at home or on the road, he's got some serious issues coming for him. Because he cannot win the big game against Ohio State. If he's throwing multiple picks, multiple sacks, if he's getting sacked multiple times, then he's got some work to do.
Was C.J. Stroud overrated?
I put C.J. Stroud over Drew Aller any day.
Well,
honestly, better quarterback.
That wasn't the question.
The question. But let me get to number 3. Let me get to number 3, Mark, for you.
The question was C.J. Stroud? I'm making a point here. Was C.J. Stroud overrated?
No.
I'm not asking whether he was better than Drew Aller.
I said C.J. is not overrated.
Okay. C.J. Stroud didn't beat Michigan, couldn't beat Michigan.
He took us to a national championship game, and we almost won against Georgia. That at least makes up for it.
It was not a national championship game, but all right, proceed.
Still, number 3, Keelan Russell. He's still got to go through development. If Caleb DeBoer and every Alabama fan talk about Keelan Russell and Ty Simpson especially, saying that they're the next big thing in Alabama, they got to really step up their A game, especially in the passing. They cannot be – that offensive line of Alabama cannot allow them to get sacks on Keelan Russell and especially Ty Simpson. I need more from Ty Simpson. I want to see what he's actually made of. Keelan Russell – I mean, everybody's overhyping him, but honestly, like I said, he's got to prove himself, especially in the big game in the next month against Georgia at home. At Georgia, he's got to prove himself against the top tier defense that comes out there and lights somebody up.
These guys haven't played.
That's what I'm saying. If they're getting overhyped preseason, then you know what? In my opinion, they're going to really hit it rock bottom after that.
They're going to hit rock bottom. Okay.
Now, you can call me the craziest fan on here, Mark, but that's just my predictions, and that's just my list of overrated quarterbacks in college football, especially. Now,
I appreciate it.
Let's talk about
We can pick up the rest of your analysis next week.
All right, Mark. Well, I'll let you go, and I'll see you later.
Appreciate it. Thank you. All right. We can only take so much of that in one sitting. All right. Okay. I don't need to address that. There's nothing wrong with what he said in regards to we don't know, but to call people overrated that haven't played, we don't know if they're overrated. Maybe people are just, I understand. So when we rank any position, but quarterbacks in particular, you can take one of two paths. You can take the path of, I'm going to rank and rate and evaluate these quarterbacks based on what they've done on the field, which is going to eliminate almost half of the quarterbacks in college football. And that's fine, but your ranking should indicate that I only rank quarterbacks that I've seen that have actually gone out and played meaningful snaps against really good teams, and enough of those that they can be ranked and evaluated. And there's nothing wrong with that, saying, you know what? I don't know how good Arch Manning is, Julian saying, Bryce Underwood. I don't know how good they are because they haven't played against this competition or showed us anything. Nothing wrong with that. You just have eliminated Oregon, Alabama, Ohio State, Michigan, and we could go on down the line of inexperienced quarterbacks, Texas, who have not done anything. Okay? You can be that person. That's fine. I have no issue with that. But don't call them overrated. We don't know if they're overrated. First of all, anytime somebody brings up they're overrated, they're underrated, according to who? That's my first question. Who are you watching? And it's not like I've never made the statement that somebody's overrated or underrated. So I fall into that as well, but I usually have something in my head to back up my statement. For example, at this point last year, going into last season, Carson Beck, I did a video where I went to a dozen sources that had quarterback ratings, and I showed where Carson Beck was number one everywhere. And I simply said, he's not that good. He is not CJ Stroud, Justin Fields, Trevor Lawrence, Deshaun Watson, Bryce Young, Joe Burrow. He is not that good. Maybe that's a reflection on everybody else as well, but I do not believe Carson Beck to be a consensus number one quarterback in college football across the board. So that was my video. This was 1 year ago. And so that's when I could substantiate, this is what I'm talking about, ratings. And I took screenshots of actual platforms and sites, some legit, some could be questioned, that have rankings and ratings. But when somebody just says they're overrated, they're underrated, by whom? So that's the first question that I ask. By whom? Secondly, if you're talking about players who have yet to perform, who have yet to play, then they might be. We have to wait and see. It's not like we're having some historical conversation and say, you know what? I think so-and-so's underrated. I think somebody's overrated. I think Peyton Manning's overrated. Well, all the stats and all the accomplishments are in the books. We can talk about it. I think, and that was an example. That doesn't mean I think Peyton Manning is overrated. I'm just saying that the career's in the books, so we can go ahead and rank and evaluate in every way possible. All right. Here's my best example. I think Matthew Miller's with us right now. He's heard it 1,000 times. My apologies. Bryce Young. Bryce Young had a sterling scouting report, 5-star, signed by Alabama, all the things that check the boxes. He had played a couple minutes the season before, had about 6 pass attempts that meant nothing against the likes of the FCS group of 5 teams, Vanderbilt, whoever. So he had not shown us anything. Nick Saban, however, made him the starting quarterback before spring practice. Most coaches would have said, you know, I know this is the guy, but let's make him earn it. He's got to earn it. Let's at least make him grind it through spring, if not 2 weeks of August. And then let's make him fight for the position. Push him. That's a valid coaching approach. We see it over and over, tried and true. Nick Saban, however, took a different approach. Said Bryce Young's the best quarterback on this team. He's going to be the starting quarterback. And he said that prior to spring practice. So you know what that told me? Man, I just watched about 3 or 4 quarterback battles at Alabama over the last few years involving guys like Jalen Hurts and Jake Coker and Blake Sims. And I can't remember the guy that transferred to Arizona State after he beat out Jalen Hurts, but then he was benched. Can't think of the guy's name right offhand. So anyway, I had seen this play out a number of times with Nick Saban, allowing quarterbacks to battle for the job, but not with Bryce Young. So what did that tell me? The dude is special. So I ranked him as the number 2 quarterback in the nation. The only issue or the only mistake that I made is that I did not rank him in the number 1 quarterback in the nation, possibly. And so I took an onslaught of people that went nuts because they said, how can you rank a guy that hasn't played as the number 2 quarterback in the nation? I said, I understand your approach, but if you take that approach, you can't rank everyone. You can only rank about half the quarterbacks. But I buy into the projection. I am projecting. So our friend Caden calls and says that the Alabama quarterbacks are overrated. They've never won a big game. Well, of course, they've never won a big game. They've never been given the opportunity to win a big game. And who else? Arch Manning. Yes. Okay. I don't know that all those quarterbacks are going to be successful, but man, I would take the over on Arch Manning being successful this year. I would be willing to, depending on what stats you want to throw out there and winning record, that he will do just fine. I believe he will be one of the 10 best quarterbacks in college football this year. All right. We do appreciate you being here at the Voice of College Football. We got Matthew with a question. This may be for Steve, so we'll hold off on this one. And let's show you some of Steve's ratings, and you guys can prep your questions, and I will as well. So we can first and foremost go to the Big Ten. And before we do that, I want to remind everyone, since we are on the topic of the Big Ten, I believe they're the first conference I have pulled up here, that the Big Ten Live Show is back. Good news for everyone. Corey, Brad, and myself getting together every week, starting with Big Ten Media Days. So stay tuned for day and time. The Big Ten Live Show is back. We will take your calls. We'll have great guests. We will just bludgeon you with Big Ten football talk every week. Mark it down on your calendar. I wish you could. I can't give you a day and time for sure. Pretty sure, but not 100% sure. So this is what Steve has for us in terms of rankings and ratings from the Big Ten. So he goes position by position, as you can see right there. He includes roster depth and coaching. And he basically thinks that when you add all these factors up, that Penn State is the best team in the Big Ten, followed by Ohio State, and then it's Oregon and Michigan. So that's pretty conventional. Pretty conventional there. We appreciate Tim being here, displaying the patience of Job as always. Well, maybe slightly less, but I'm in that ballpark. So here we go with the Big Ten. And I've looked over the Big Ten, so I've got all sorts of different things to hit Steve with. So I'm not going to go through those right now and lay those out because, yeah, I don't exactly. Yeah, I will just let Steve express himself in response to my questions about the Big Ten. So there's the Big Ten if you want to take that in. quick review here. Best quarterbacks in the Big Ten belong to Penn State. No, actually, Ohio State. No, I'm sorry. Depth is first with Ohio State. I'm looking at two screens at the same time. Ohio State, number one in depth. Penn State's right there, as is Michigan and Oregon. The coaching goes to Ohio State. We'll delve into that topic a little bit with Penn State right there as well. UCLA, the worst coaching staff in the Big Ten. Quarterbacks. Now it gets tricky here. Rating and ranking quarterbacks, wide receivers, and running backs. They're all dependent on the offensive line. So I think you can rank and rate the offensive line, although if you're just looking at statistics for an offensive line at the end of the year to say sacks allowed, rushing yards per game, rushing yards per carry, well, if you got Barry Sanders in the backfield, he kind of makes the offensive line look good. So it can work both ways, but it's more that those skill position players are dependent on the offensive line. So it appears as though Steve approaches his rankings much like I do, in that, let's say Julian's saying because he has the best weapons in the conference, he produces the best stats. That doesn't necessarily make him the best quarterback. That means he's got the best stats. Now, he's going to have to be one of the best quarterbacks. He can't be a complete slouch and be the worst quarterback, and just because he's got the best weapons, make it all happen. There are still guys on the other side that are really good at coverage and really good at rushing the passer and doing things that he just can't. These dudes aren't going to be open by 12 yards every play. So he's going to have to play well to highlight, accentuate the skill around him, but it's obviously all interconnected. So I'll say it this way, and I'm going to say the same thing to Steve, that when I approach rankings for individual position units, knowing that it's all dependent on the offensive side to the offensive line, I do my best to separate them. Otherwise, what you should do is rank the passing offense and the rushing offense and just do it that way and say, when you put the quarterback and the wide receivers and the tight end and the offensive line and put it all together as a passing unit, then we can rank them and do the same thing with the rushing component. But I try to separate and say, you know what? This particular team might have the third or fourth best quarterback, but they might come together as the best pass offense because he's got the best weapon. So, for example, there was a time when Tom Brady was considered the best quarterback in football. Okay, whenever that was. If you consider Tom Brady to be the best quarterback in the NFL, at a point that I would have ranked him the number one quarterback in the NFL, if he would have immediately been traded to the worst offense in the NFL with the worst offensive line and the worst wide receivers, that obviously would have impacted his statistics greatly. He would have been on his back. He would have had receivers running the wrong routes or not precise routes or not fighting for the football, not catching the football, all those things. So his statistics would have suffered. However, I would have attempted to look through that to say he's still the same dude. He's still the best quarterback. But his statistics are suffering. So we're going to see how Steve evaluates that component, because this is the most interconnected sport there is. There's more dependence. And this is one of the things that makes it such a beautiful sport. It's the ultimate team sport. It's easy to rank, well, relatively easy to rank hitters in baseball or basketball. Of course, you got a teammate and you have to work together to get the ball in the hoop. There is that component, but it's nothing close to football. So we'll take your comments, questions to Steve. I don't want to go through too much of what I got here that is going to point to various questions that I have, and I'll just make sure that Steve is on his way. Steve is notorious for loving the StreamYard. He says, I can't get on your godforsaken StreamYard. We'll see if we can. I don't know if this is going to help him or not. I never have to fight through it because I own my little account, and that works for me. This could, I don't know if this is going to help or not. And while we're doing this, I will pop up the next conference. Let's see. So let's look at the next conference in terms of Steve's power ratings. So what we've got here is, I believe, the ACC showing up. Oh. I apologize, folks. This is bad broadcasting on my part, and I hate that I make it difficult on Steve to get on here. StreamYard does not like him. He doesn't like StreamYard. It's a mutual thing. Oh, I heard the fine beep that I like to hear. We finally got him here. Steve, how are you?
You're killing me, Smalls. You're killing me with this app. Okay. I mean, I literally can log into the Department of Defense easier than I can log into your StreamYard. It's nuts. Nuts. But I'm great. How are you, brother?
I'm doing just fine. I don't know what to tell you. I'm never on that side of it. And yeah, we've got our 50 or 60 people that are on this thing all the time. So anyway, here we go.
Moron is what you're trying to say. I'm going to have to hire Connor Stallions to help me figure out how StreamYard works.
When it comes to technology, you know, you're talking to a guy. Let's start off the conversation here. You're talking to a guy that posted a video this morning, Steve, that said, my dumb ass predictions, because we had some brilliant genius who came on here yesterday. Of course, he didn't show his face or anything, but he left a comment in the chat that said, what kind of dumbass predictions are we going to get on a Mark this year? So I love to take on those kind of questions. Those are my favorite kind of conversation pieces to then go off on. Yeah, let's go through the college football playoff and see how many dumbass predictions I made. And I made that dumbass prediction about Ohio State winning the national championship. And I was dumb enough to make that in August. And dumbass predictions at 80% against the money line and the dumbass 60% against the spread. You know, what other dumbass predictions can I make? So anyway, I know you're into dumbass predictions as well.
Love them. In fact, it's a fetish of mine. Everybody knows this. Yes.
So before we go, happy birthday to your lovely daughter. I noticed that on Twitter.
Yeah. Zoe is 20 years old today. She's, I mean, I'm completely owned. So yes.
Yes, it's a blessing.
Yes.
It is a blessing. I can speak to that firsthand myself. All right, Steve, we got the ratings up here. We looked at the Big Ten with our audience. So let's go back to the Big Ten. But first, I was trying to explain where I thought your head is with this. And we've gone through this before, where this is the most team-oriented sport out of the major sports, at least that we follow. It's not rating baseball hitters or basketball point guards. Obviously, they're dependent to a certain extent. So obviously, by ranking the individual positions, you are telling us that Ohio State could come out with the best offense in the Big Ten, passing offense in the Big Ten. That doesn't mean that the best quarterback plays for Ohio State. Or to flip it around, when Tom Brady was in his prime and considered the best quarterback in the NFL, if he suddenly was traded to the worst offense in the NFL, his statistics would take a mighty hit, but he would still be the same guy and could be rated the best quarterback in the NFL.
Yeah, I mean, I do these. Well, first of all, the first thing I do when I put my power ratings together every year is I did my team total talent ratings for years. And I told you last time I was on, it's just become impossible. I don't have the time, Purdue had 50 players. Purdue had 50 players go in and out of the transfer portal. I don't have time to follow that, man. I just don't. All right. I just don't. And so in the last couple of years, Bill Connolly over at SP Plus has altered his metrics to include what I was actually using for my team total talent ratings. So I use him now to determine the depth factor, the overall quality of people's rosters, and not his. And so it's his weighted formula. It's not returning production, right? If we did returning production, most years Ohio State's going to not rank very high because they're losing an influx of players every 3 years, all of the time. Okay, so I want his what he weights based on what is the history of that position, their recruiting ratings, etc. So that's what I use now for my talent ratings, and these are the SP Plus numbers through the end of May, so the most recent ones. And then I do my own coaching ratings, and we've gone over that every single year, how I do that. This year, in honor of you, to settle ties, I settled ties for my coaching ratings on the basis of would I hire that person right now over the people they're tied with. That was the tiebreaker that I utilized. All right. Just to add, because I'm trying to balance out. Remember, I'm not doing a coaching rating to determine, anything other than who I'd want coaching based on track record and trajectory, a team. The point of my power ratings is to project the upcoming season. All right. Not necessarily to name the best, if I'm an athletic director, the best coaches in college football to call if I've got an opening. Right. So I'm trying to determine that. And so I have to figure out how to weigh past history, but then catch coaches that are clearly on the downside, like a Luke Fickell, catch coaches that are clearly, on the upswing, like the young coach at Arizona State, but not overreact to that on one season at the same time. And then once I do that, I wait for the magazines all to come out, along with stuff I keep track of all throughout the year. And then I just go position group by position group on how I would rate those teams against the other teams in their conference, because that's anywhere from 60 to 70% of your schedule in a given year. And given the lack of Power 5 on Power 5 non-conference games we have, it's really the only part of your schedule for the vast majority of teams, except for a couple dozen of these non-conference games that really are earth-shattering. It's really what matters the most, because that tells me how you're going to go up against the teams that you're playing most of your schedule against. All right. And then, we add that all up at the end, and we come up with an overall rating that gives me an idea of where I think teams are in their league. And then I take that rating and then we go through their schedules. We look for letdown spots, things of that nature, revenge spots. For example, when we get to the SEC, Texas just absolutely gave Florida last year one of the most embarrassing losses that program's ever had. Okay. And so now Florida gets them back at their place this year and a bye before that game. Right. So those are the kinds of spots I'm looking for when I do the projection of how I think the season will go, which is what, people are going to see here in a couple days. I'm about finished with my preview, and that'll get posted on my Patreon page. And then we'll lay that out when Michigan Podcast and Bigger 10 return next week. And so, but what you're looking at right here, this is the Rosetta Stone. This is, if we were in a vacuum and I didn't have to consider, letdown spots and back-to-back road games and history and revenge spots and things of that nature, if we were just going to let a power rating determine and not count the games, which frankly, there are some analysts that are actually going down that road. Let's just not even count the games. The season doesn't matter. What does the Vegas point spread say? Okay. This is just, if, we didn't play the games themselves, didn't factor in the emotions of 18 to 23-year-olds, and just did a strict, rough or strict, assessment of nothing other than personnel and overall depth and the quality of their coaching staff. One of the things I struggled with the most in the Big Ten was where to rate the Ohio State quarterback situation, because as a situation, it's a great situation. But when I'm listening to a betting podcast 2 weeks ago and Bobby Carpenter comes on, Ohio State great, and he says, hey, I went to 12 or 13 of Ohio State's 16 spring practices, and I didn't think there was much difference at all between Julian Sain and a guy that's been kind of languishing in the program for 3 years. So, I that has to account for something, And then, I have to ask myself a question. For example, I think there's 136 teams now in Division I, Mark? I think that's the number.
Yes.
Okay. I think all 136, including your coach, would trade Bryce Underwood for Julian Sayin. All 136. And I don't think that's anything negative against Julian Sayin. I mean, listen, we just lost Dave Parker, one of the great players in Pittsburgh Pirate history, right? Okay. All-time, great player, all-time great player in the franchise history, perennial all-star caliber player. Roberto Clemente or Dave Parker, who you taking, Mark? And what do you think every other team Major League Baseball is taking?
Absolutely.
That's my point. So that's not meant to be a knock on either Lincoln Kreinholz or Julian Sayin. It's just, I think Michigan signed the Trevor Lawrence, Matt Stafford level quarterback recruit of the last few cycles. And I think that would just be reflective of that. That being said, we're arguing over who's the 10th or 9th best quarterback in the league, so it's really kind of an irrelevant argument. And then here's the other thing I have to figure out too in my power ratings: how much of the advantage that a team has is because of personnel or because how I rate the depth and the coaching. You see what I'm saying? And so I got to kind of weigh that too, because that's not just a 1-to-1, but there'll be some differences and distinctions when the schedules get factored in, when the preview comes out here in a couple days. But these power ratings are the legend of the map. They're the Rosetta Stone. There won't be any like real steep departures from this, except for maybe a couple teams that I think have, uniquely favorable schedule situations, and or a quarterback that can maybe make up some of the ground here, or in the case of Oklahoma, I think they're really improved at the three most important spots on a team: quarterback, defensive line, and then offensive line. I think quarterback and defensive line have had massive upgrades, and the offensive line just cannot possibly be as bad as it was a year ago. All right. So that's just kind of an introduction to what we're going to discuss.
Steve, before we continue, I'm going to clear your good name as a baseball fan and historian, because people have left the names of Willie Stargell and Barry Bonds in the chat. Steve is comparing right fielders for the Pittsburgh Pirates.
Yeah.
That is the key.
Yeah.
He's not talking about the greatest player in the history of the franchise. He's talking about if we made a lineup for the greatest of all time at each position, Dave Parker would be that guy for a lot of other franchises, but not matched up against Roberto Clemente.
That's my point. Yes.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So Drew Aller is the best combination of talent and proven ability is what I'm gaining from this ranking.
Yes. Now, again, do I think Drew Aller is deserve? If we were doing just straight up what I think will likely happen by the end of the year, do I think Drew Aller will be the number one quarterback in the Big Ten at the end of the year? Not unless he takes a substantial step forward. I went and looked at his stats in games against ranked opponents, and it kind of reminds me of a player Michigan had about 20 years ago, Mark, a guy named John Navarre. And for 3 years as a starter at Michigan, I mean, his stats at home and away were like, what are we doing here on the road? And I mean, just we get on the road, and I kind of nicknamed him at the time John Buzzar, okay? Because we go on the road and things just got wacky, But then he did, but a lot of this doesn't happen a lot. But John took a massive leap his senior year, and ended up having what still may be the greatest single passing season in Michigan football history when you factor in yards, touchdowns, the team's success that year. So I do think the second year in Andy Kotelnicki's system, I think you look at the jump that Cade Klubnik took the year 2 last year in a celebrated offensive coordinator system. Okay, and I could foresee that, especially because if you look at their schedule, Michigan's 2023 national championship schedule called and said this Penn State schedule is soft. Okay, I mean this is crazy. Okay, the schedule that Penn State is playing, which could be good or bad. I kind of think it's good given how veteran this team was. It was good for us. We were pretty healthy, except whether the coach was going to be on the sidelines when our season really began that year, that first weekend in November on the road there in Happy Valley. So I could foresee that Drew Aller will take a step forward this year. But even if he doesn't, heading into the year, I don't see a quarterback that I right now would rate ahead of him in the Big Ten.
So, Steve, despite what you just framed between Bryce Underwood and Julian Sayin, and Michigan also having a large experience advantage on the bench with Mikey Keene, and now not that you want to see Jake Garcia against anybody meaningful minutes. No, you don't want to see that, but he does have experience. It's only a one spot difference, so you stayed very close to your metric.
Yeah, and then how much do you factor in the backup quarterback situation?
Yes,
and again, what you're looking for is if am I several points off, right? If I'm several points off, then I go back and do a reevaluation, and then I look at all these and I say, hey, if I'm on shows like Mark Rogers and he asked me to defend this, can I defend it? We're all doing some level of projection and opinion, and so there's going to be some subjectivity here for sure. All right, and I think that what you're trying to do is get within a range that you're within range of having the most accurate assessment of where these teams are heading into the year as you possibly can.
We've gotten to a place in modern football, especially in the NFL, and you can correct me if you get a different perspective, Steve, on the running back position, that it's just kind of like, it's nice to have a great one, but if you don't have a great one, you just need the line in the passing game, and the running backs are kind of interchangeable. They're all fast. They should be decent to some extent. But I think you really hit on the downgrade at Ohio State at the running back position. I'm concerned about the running back position not being anything close to what it was with Judkins and Henderson. On the flip side, you've got Michigan ranked number 2. And what I saw out of Jordan Marshall against Alabama and those NFL defenders, it wasn't like he was given gaping holes all day, like he could just run. Man, he showed to be a powerful runner in the fourth quarter as a true freshman.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I think he broke something like a dozen or 15 tackles. PFF had him down for in the game against Alabama. And remember, Jahad Campbell, that entire Alabama defense played in that game against Jordan Marshall. The thing about running back, and as a Lions fan, and with what the Lions did a couple of years ago in the draft, taking Jahmyr Gibbs about 10, 15 spots higher than anybody had him projected at the time. So I've kind of heard this debate about this position a lot. And I think for the most part, if Ohio State's baseline passing game is what it typically is, and again, I have the running backs here rated 13th. That's not terrible, So that's fine. That's fine. If the baseline of the passing game is the same, it becomes a factor. And when I say baseline, it doesn't mean Julian Sayin has to be Dwayne Haskins, CJ Stroud, maybe not even Will Howard last year. He just can't be a significant drop off so that teams can scheme Jeremiah Smith out of a game unless you guys are running some kind of gadget plays and stuff just to contrive ways to get him the football. You know what I'm saying? Okay. As long as that's intact, then your running backs are fine. What I think you're seeing in the NFL is when you have Jahmyr Gibbs, when you have Saquon Barkley, when you have that player, all right, then you throw positional value out because you're dealing with a great player. All right. And you're going to see more of this in college football now with revenue sharing. And I mean, Michigan literally went out and got an assistant GM from the NFL and Sean McGee and is running a salary cap NFL kind of positional value system. And now they're making an exception for Savion Hyder in the recruiting class. There's some other running backs they could have gotten, they've not gotten, because they did not think, they thought, frankly, we're Michigan. We can take the 26th running back and make him Hassan Haskins if we need to. All right. So they didn't think they were worth paying, and those guys went other places. Savion Hyder, they think, is that level of talent. And so his greatness exceeds the positional value. And so I think for much of the Big Ten, it doesn't really matter where you're ranked in this category. Because at this level, almost every team's going to have some running back that would be a factor in another team's depth chart at number 2 or number 3 if they were at almost any other school in our league, except for the unique situation Penn State has with Katron Allen and Nicholas Singleton both coming back, okay? That all notwithstanding, though, if you have that one difference maker player, then positional value is out the window. I don't think Ohio State has that player. I think it's possible Michigan may have that in Justice Haynes. In in that he provides the player that after Jordan Marshall has meat tenderized you for 3 quarters, just comes in and creases you and closes a game out. Okay. We'll see, but that's his reputation. We'll see. But I did not see a lot of, outside of Penn State. I mean, if you wanted to tell me that you had Michigan's running back situation 14th, okay. You wanted to tell me you had Ohio State and Michigan's flipped, I'm okay with that.
And just to clarify, everyone, when Steve says 13th or 14th, he means flip that around 13 or 14 points. Obviously, he's given the most points to the best. Yeah. So it's really like 4th or 5th best in the Big Ten. Catch Steve's work at Michigan Podcast. It's right here, easy to find on YouTube, Michigan Podcast. As Steve had just mentioned a couple minutes ago, ready to get rolling with the Michigan Podcast and also the Bigger 10 starting next week. So follow Steve. And if you ask me personally, pardon this comment, Steve, but I prefer, even beyond his football knowledge, which is first rate, top shelf. That's why we got him on here all the time. What he does during his day job. If you care about this country and care about matters that are more important, catch Steve on the Blaze and just follow him on X at Steve Deace.
Thank you, brother.
Steve is doing yeoman's work, fighting for liberty, freedom, and godliness. All right, Steve, let's not much respect for Barry Odom coming in from UNLV to take over at Purdue.
Whatever I told you last year, I thought that I called him John L. Smith. I'm sorry. Shouldn't have done that because Jonathan Smith had a much greater, he deserved way more respect than that for what he did at Oregon State. So that's my bad. Mea culpa, maxima, mea culpa, Freudian slip. But I told you last year watching Michigan State in the spring. Now that's one thing I should have mentioned in my preamble, Mark. There weren't a lot of spring games this year, and there were not a lot on TV. Okay. And so I'm a big eye test guy, and I didn't get a lot of those. So we'll see what that does in terms of how I did the evaluation this year. I also think overall, my power ratings have Alabama overall the most complete team in the country. But it's not like it was a few years ago, all right, where they've got guys coming off the bench that would start at 97% of the other schools. The talent amongst the top tier of schools way more spread out than I can ever remember. Certainly since the playoff era, for sure. This to me looks much more like college basketball now, where there's Cinderella comes out every year, every decade or two, a Villanova wins or a Butler gets to the national championship game. But by and large, after the first round, it's going to be a top 4 seed that's going to win the NCAA tournament, but it could be any of the top 4 seeds. All right. That's kind of where I think this is heading with football now, with everybody ever able to pay. I don't think it's a coincidence at all. The Big Ten has won back-to-back national championships after everybody started getting paid above board. I don't think that just is lickety split. Who knew? I don't think that's a coincidence. Okay. And so I have Alabama as the most complete team. I'm going to pick them to win the national championship. And there's some mitigating factors I like there too. I like getting them on the rebound. I think they're undervalued. I think bringing back Ryan Grubb as OC and him and Kalen DeBoer reuniting that kind of Lennon and McCartney partnership, it will be good. I think they have more quarterbacks that are not as talented as what they had before, but more fit what they want to do. But again, the talent amongst the top tier of teams is way closer, than I can ever remember. So I should have mentioned that in my preamble as well. Forgive me, I forgot the question that you asked where I went on that rabbit trail. Repeat me on that.
I threw out Barry Odom because obviously,
Purdue, thank you.
He's a 500 coach at Missouri, but did an exceptional job
at UNLV. Yeah, because I mentioned Jonathan Smith. I told you last year after watching them in the spring, I thought he had a year 0 roster, and I think that you kind of saw that. I mean, this is primordial lose what Purdue has. It's been a few moons. It's been a few new moons on Monday, Duran, since I have seen a Power 4 team whose roster is as anemic with what Purdue is going to roll out with this year. I mean, it is, there's year 0, and then there is, after the first protein hit the first, a piece of carbon in the universe. And that's kind of where Purdue is at right now. Yeah.
Well, I don't think anyone wants to to hear us continue with Purdue, but I'll just say one last thing. Jeff Brom obviously did an exceptional job
No
there.
doubt.
Just because they made the Big Ten championship game, obviously they weren't the second best team in the conference, but still they were Minnesota, Illinois. You know, they were in that range, and now you see what the rankings are, and we saw what we saw last season, in which they beat an FCS team and nobody else. So it is really bad. I am glad to see that we are on par with Michigan State in the running back room, because I just posted a Michigan State prediction yesterday, and I said, this is the worst running back room by far in the Big Ten, and it might be one of the worst in college football, power conference level.
I don't disagree. And, you know, for you and I, you know, I've been, you know, I love to watch old, I tend to go back 30 or 40 years every offseason and go and try to find all the old games on YouTube, the original broadcast. And if you search it and go through it right, you can actually set it up that you're watching the season in chronological order as it's played out. And so I've been watching some of the games from the 1985 season. And even though, you know, my Michigan fandom was birthed when we moved to Michigan the weekend before Thanksgiving in '83, and I just happened to turn on the Rick Rogers, Steve Smith versus Mike Tomczak, Michigan, Ohio State game, and fell in love. The next year, Michigan was not very good, and the Tigers were great. And just, I was 9 years old and obsessed with that team. The team that really, the first Michigan team I followed from the start of the year all the way to the end, all right, and really began my thing of I just don't miss a game, was that '85 team. And man, you go back, is Lorenzo White the most underrated running back in the entire history of the Big Ten? He might be. You know, and you think of year after year, Lorenzo White, Blake Ezor, remember him?
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, Highland Hickson, Tico Duckett, TJ Duckett. I mean, they had 2,000-yard rushers in a season in the 90s. I mean, this has been a school that has had more than its share of tailbacks, but that position looks pretty anemic by their traditional standards right now.
No doubt. Let's get to some of these questions coming in from people, so we appreciate them. So I don't know if you saw this. We talked about this and highlighted this on yesterday's show, but there's a dude that went to Vegas and bet $600,000+ and split it between Clemson, Penn State, and Texas to win the national championship. So we were talking about, you know, him hedging his bet and the likelihood that it's going to come through and so forth and so on. So Matthew's kind of playing off of that, says, for Mark and Steve, if I gave you Clemson, Penn State, and Texas versus the field, who do you take? I feel this year is wide open because
I'm taking the field 100%. Not a doubt. Not a doubt. First of all, I think my power ratings think Texas is the most overrated team in the preseason. I was stunned when I got done with this, what my power rating said. We can go to that. You'll see that on the page. I mean, Texas being ranked number 1 in all of these publications. I mean, my power ratings have them the 3rd best team in their league. In fact, I haven't put out my best bet win totals yet, because I think now with all the player movement, I used to say the thing used to be on win totals, get in early, right? Before the market is set.
Sure.
But I think now with all the player movement, now they're adding another portal window for disciplinary kids and walk-ons, and who knows. Okay, to me, I think wait as late as possible now. Have as much. I will tell you, it is very possible I'm going to have under 10.5 wins as best bets for both Ohio State and Texas. I look at their schedules. I think first of all, they play one another week 1, so that's a loss for one of them right there. Right? I only need the other one to get one more loss in the next 11 games. You look at their schedules. I counted 7 very losable games, I thought, for Ohio State and Texas. I mean, and when I say losable, anywhere from 25 to 30%. And if you're going to put a win total on a team with a 10.5, I just don't think there ought to be that many games that you have a 1 in 4, 1 in 3 chance of losing. Okay. So, I mean, I have Texas in my power ratings closer to Texas A&M than I do Alabama and Georgia. I don't, maybe Arch Manning will be great. Probably will be to some degree, but I have to ask myself, this isn't he set out last year as a freshman and then they let Quinn Ewers play. He couldn't beat him out for 2 years, Mark, a 7th round draft pick for 2 years. Help me understand that. That makes no sense. I don't know, man. I mean, and here's the thing. I still have them in my power ratings as kind of in that, last group of at-large teams competing for a playoff bid realm. But all these magazines rating them number 1. I don't agree with that at all. I don't. I think Clemson has a much stronger case. They get LSU with an all-new starting offensive line that opening week at home. You win that, and then you kind of, dominate the ACC, which they did even last year when they lost 3 games. And then what was the third team that he mentioned? Penn State. I have Penn State. I'm going to have Penn State in the national championship game, losing to Alabama more than likely.
Yeah, so the way things have stacked up for me, and I have yet to release all these predictions, but I got Texas losing 2 games in the SEC. I've got them beating Ohio State. Who knows? Toss up. It's in Columbus. But yeah, Ohio State could be an exceptional team that, who knows, 9-3 could get in a team like Oklahoma because their schedule's so difficult. Yep. Or maybe if Ohio State loses at the wire to Texas and Penn State, and they're 2 of the 3 top teams in the, something like that might get a 9-3 team in. But yeah, otherwise, it's we could see one of the big powers left out of the playoffs. Mike with a Matt Weiss, Connor Stallions deal there. Mike, we appreciate this. We'll go right past that. Who do you trust more for quarterback evaluation than Nick Saban and Ryan Day? I think what Mike is responding to here, before we brought you on, I gave this as an example of what I was seeing in your quarterback ratings. There are people that just say, you got to be a proven quarterback. If you're a first-time quarterback, I can't rank you. And I respect that, but I don't do that. I try to project. So when Nick Saban was telling us Bryce Young is my starting quarterback, even before spring practice, even though he only thrown 5 passes the year before, I said, this guy must be one of the best quarterbacks in football. So I ranked him number 2 in the nation.
Hey, I think I had Julian saying 13th or 14th until I listened to that Bobby Carpenter interview. And I listen to Bobby Carpenter all the time. I'm a Sirius XM podcast guy. So, I mean, Bobby Carpenter is a slap. And I mean that with affection. Okay. He is an absolute Buckeye slap. Okay. Buckeye slap. And he's telling me your prize recruit could not distance himself in spring practice from a 3rd-year journeyman quarterback. Okay. I have to take that into account, man. And I don't apologize for that.
Well, the 2 spring games that we saw Julian saying was a small sample size, but it was nothing special. That's for sure. Yakov says, elite education no longer means anything. I don't know where we're going there.
I don't either. I think there's a handful of kids that they still care about that. But other than that, by the way, it hasn't meant anything for a long time, except for a handful of kids.
So, Steve, I'll remind you that I've got a +or-3 win ratio that I like to track from season to season.
Yep.
So last year in the Big Ten, we had Michigan went from 12-7 from the previous season, Washington 12-6, Maryland 7-4, Northwestern 7-4, Purdue from 4-1, Indiana the only upward trend 3-11. So are you finding those teams that are going to have drastic jumps or declines? I
think Illinois is being way overrated. Even though my power ratings are still fairly high on them. But I think people are underrating. The lucky win they had against Rutgers, for example, last year. I don't know. I looked this up. Illinois has 4 10-win seasons in the last 40 years. All right. From 1983 to 2024, they've had 4 double-digit win seasons. The best they've ever done the year after that is they went 8-4 once. And I got to tell you, man, Bert is running his mouth with reckless abandon. Okay. So I kind of, we just saw this a few years ago with Illinois, right? That team that should have won the West, should have beat Michigan at the end of the year, and then came back the next year, lost some key pieces. They didn't lose a lot, Mark, but if you watched their offense last year, those 2 receivers and their running back, they lost the 3 best weapons their quarterback had, those are the only 3 players they lost. They lost the running back to Georgia, the tampering that Bert's alleging. And then the 2 receivers are both gone to the NFL. That was a lot of their offense last year. It was not great down to down. It was kind of feast or famine, so let's see them replace those guys. They do return a lot. But I kind of feel like talking about them as a playoff team, I think that's way overboard. I think Indiana's an easy choice to take a downward turn, but I think it's just only because I still think my power ratings still think they're going to be pretty good. Actually, I think Mendoza will be pretty good too. The quarterback transfer out of Cal, but again, just the schedule is tougher, which wouldn't take much than the schedule that they played last year. I think high variance teams in my numbers. USC and Washington and Nebraska are high variance teams in my numbers. I could foresee a scenario where Nebraska is 6-6. I could see them go 10-2. USC had all those close losses last year. They made the quarterback switch, and it's weird. He wasn't great. Maava was not great, but the team played better around him. And the one loss they had was they kind of had the fluky 2 pick sixes against Notre Dame and made that score look, more lopsided than it actually was. So I think that's a high variance team, and I think Washington I'm curious about because there were a few years ago Louisville played this bowl game and threw this redshirt quarterback out named Lamar Jackson and just let him go in a glorified scrimmage, and he had went like 300 or 200 or some video game number, and that was kind of announcing him for the next year. And it kind of feels like Damon Williams did that in the bowl game for Washington, a game they lost, by the way. Now, the difference is Lamar Jackson was running that much in the ACC. He's also bigger. I mean, Damon Williams is 5'10 and a half. So I wonder about that holding up for 12 games. But I could see him be the kind of player that, nobody sees. I'll just tell you, I bet him for the Heisman like at 100-1. Because I'll take a flyer on that with that level of talent that he kind of takes off Lenora Sellers style. So those to me are your wide variance teams. I'm really torn on Iowa. The quarterback they brought in was gone all offseason, recovering from surgery. Gronowski, the FCS kid. We saw last year Bremer at Minnesota also was kind of a similarly profiled FCS award-winning quarterback. And even though he was there, he was great in November, but even though he was there all offseason, it took him about half the year to adjust to playing at this level. So I do wonder about what happens when the quarterback who wasn't able to practice all offseason is just now throwing the football here this summer. What's his learning curve like? Because I don't think they're going to be quite as good on defense. Now, when I say that, I think they're still like a top 25 defense, but we're used to them kind of being top 10, So when we're dealing now with 18 teams that are all able to pay players now, those to me are the mitigating factors and the margins that you are looking for. All right. Who you don't have to play. And then also though, those sorts of X factors that kind of just get lost in just your basic starters returning, starters lost, and who'd you lose to the portal and who do you have coming back?
I can't push back on too much, Steve, considering I picked Illinois 5-4 in the conference. And so I'm right there with you. And then USC,
I'm going to pick them 6-3, but Duke is a team I am very high on. My numbers are very high on Duke. Duke has a very favorable schedule. They will be one of my win total best bets here in a couple days. And they play a road game there early in the season.
Exactly.
And what's interesting about this Duke team, by the way, is it's where they're very good. I think it's possible next to Clemson, they have the second best defensive line, maybe next to Clemson and Miami, the best defensive line in the ACC, right? So it's not, a fluky offense with the old coach, David Cutcliffe. I mean, this is a strong trench team now.
And the variance on USC is almost built into the program based on who Lincoln Riley is, what USC is when they're not John McKay, Pete Carroll, John Robinson, that the way they acquire great talent in certain areas and spots, then we go out and we see them take Penn State to double overtime. They beat Texas A&M, they beat LSU, but then they mess around with Maryland and Minnesota and lose these games. And I think that's going to continue to a certain extent.
Until you see otherwise, I don't know how you could think otherwise. But if it doesn't, if there is a level of consistency found there, then because I don't think we're necessarily dealing with personnel now. I don't think their roster overall is as strong as Penn State, Ohio State's, Michigan's, or Oregon's, but I also don't think it's that far off again. Similar to what we were just saying a minute ago about, I think Alabama has the most complete roster according to my ratings, but it's not Saban Alabama, where it's so clear their roster is better than everybody else. So a key injury here or there. And I could see USC even, in fact, to me, I'd only bet two teams to win the Big Ten, looking at the odds. I bet Michigan when it was 8-1. I don't know what it is now, and USC. To me, those are the only two teams where the odds are valued enough, and the roster has enough upside that it's realistic to get a return there, a nice return on a bet.
And I think with Iowa, their defense was loaded going into last season with proven production,
right,
future NFL players, all of that. And they disappointed. They were still really good on defense, but not by their standards. And I think some of that might be the byproduct of just one or two games being more difficult than what they faced versus the Western Division. And they're going to see that. They got to go to USC and see that offense this year. They're just a couple. They got Oregon this year. They didn't see those kind of teams.
I mean, look at the game they played against Iowa State last year. All right. 10 times out of 10, Iowa's beating Iowa State if it's 19-17, if that's the score, okay? But this was a different constructed Iowa State team in that at the end of the game, down 17-16, they had NFL second-day draft pick receivers they could throw the ball up to and make massive gains. Iowa State didn't have players like that before, right? That's, again, the kinds of margins that you need to be looking at now because the talent is more spread out amongst the top teams than I think it ever has been.
And so, Steve, as we transition to the ACC, and just keep me honest on time and so forth. We
can go another 15. That's almost a full hour. How's that?
Absolutely. That'd be great.
And I put Notre Dame with the ACC because about 50% of Notre Dame's schedule is against the ACC.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. We have to do certain things in college football to accommodate Notre Dame. It needs to end someday, but that's the way it is.
Right.
So what struck me initially was, okay, Carson Beck, his health, he didn't play in the spring. How much do you try to factor that in? Because that could be a sore spot for Miami.
Same situation with him and DJ Lagway. I think those are both top 10 quarterbacks in college football, potentially, if they're healthy. So for now, I acted as if they will be healthy. Because to me, I think because I'm also, one of the reasons I do this is to do futures bets. That's my thing. That's the thing I am the best at. I hit like 68% over the course of my career documented on futures bets. So, and by the way, I think those are the best wagers and investments now because they're the least bet into by the public. Most people don't want to make a bet in, January through July and then wait 5 months or 9 months, to see if it paid off or not. So those are, I think, the markets that are the softest with the least amount of action. So for me, I think you bet as if they're going to be healthy. And then we get to September and they're not, you can just fade them, game to game, week to week at that point. But for now, I would rate Carson Beck and DJ Lagway as if they're going to be there at the start of the year.
So the preseason prognostications across the board, you referenced a magazine a minute ago. Clemson is like prohibitive. People love Clemson. And you've got Miami right there with them.
I do in terms of overall talent. Yeah.
Yeah. Let alone Notre Dame.
And I think Miami's had a massive upgrade at defensive coordinator. Some coaches just have knacks. PJ Fleck's got a knack for hiring good DCs. A couple in a row now, you know? And what I like about this DC too, it's the exact opposite of what they did before, which I think is going to help with buy-in. So, Heatherton is more of a read and react DC than, they were doing Baltimore Raven Wink Martindale last year. Blitzing cheerleaders on 3rd and 27. In fact, no, it was Don Brown. All right. Set house blitz on 3rd and 27. All right. I think they're going to let more of, and in the ACC where Miami's going to have the better out and they don't play Clemson. So you could argue, except for the non-conference games against Florida and Notre Dame, the next 10 games, Miami's going to have the best personnel on the field. At that point, no need to get cute. Just go out there, know your role. The great prophet Bill Belichick, do your damn job. We don't have to get cute out here. We're just better athletes. We're bigger, faster, and stronger than the other 10 teams we're going to play. So that was one of my surprises, how much my numbers like Miami. I did not anticipate that.
Steve, we've had this conversation before in other off seasons. Are you going to pull the trigger on Miami?
I have probably not, but I'm from the last few, I had a heck of a time. I had a heck of a time filling out my playoff field after projecting out my season, because the amount of teams, Mark, I have 9-3, 10-2.
I'm right there with you.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, whatever. Sure. Okay. I mean, I could take like 16 teams, 17 teams, and any combination of those and Boise State. And if you told me that was your playoff, I'd be like, props. Yep. You got it, man. I'm in. Miami's in that group. Miami is in that group. What I think will be very fascinating is I think they're playing Notre Dame at the exact right time. Start of the year, new quarterback. It's going to be 10,000 degrees in Miami at 2:30 in the afternoon. All right. You got a Northern kid in CJ Carr making his very first start on the road. You and I both know there's only two opponents Miami fans show up for, Florida State and Notre Dame. So they're showing up for this one. Okay. I think they're playing Notre Dame at the right time in that game.
Yeah, interesting stuff there. I did not expect Miami to be number one there in the ACC. Yeah, I could see them losing 2 non-conference games. They also have Florida, and then going, let's say, 7-1 in the ACC. But like you, Steve, I didn't try to create this scenario. I just picked all the games, looked at all the schedules, made the record selections. Then I came to the conclusion. I looked at it and I thought, if I'm taking every 10-2 team in the SEC and Big Ten automatically in the playoff, and then looking at 9-3s in those 2 conferences, trying to compare them to 10-2s in the other 2 conferences,
how do you do
I've got like a 13-team log jam for like 2 spots.
And that's, going to 16 if they do, will alleviate some of this. But you can see in the ACC grid there. I just think Miami, Notre Dame, and Clemson are in a completely different class and tier than the entire rest of that conference.
Yeah, so I was curious, even though more people are going to be interested with the SEC, to look at the Big 12, just because this thing is just a free-for-all.
I was listening to a podcast this offseason where Tom Fornelli at CBS Sports said that he put at least $10 down on every Big 12 team to win the league.
Yes, I saw that as well.
Which I thought was funny and probably actually a good play, as a matter of fact. All right.
Is it a good play? If you do the math.
I have Baylor slightly better than the rest of the league, but slightly better. Okay. You can see after that. Okay. I have Texas Tech at 118, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 9th place TCU or 8th place TCU at 100. That is a flip of a coin. And then I have a drop off after that. Okay. Between TCU and Cincinnati. I have Cincinnati, one of the more underrated teams heading into the season. And, my numbers say Nebraska should be on the lookout that very first Thursday night there at Arrowhead. Be careful there. Okay. But BYU, I had very close to Baylor. And then of course, the situation with the quarterback there has just dramatically altered the landscape, I think, of its season. So Texas Tech, of course, were the huge spenders in the offseason, and not just in the Big 12, like among every team in the country. They're probably one of the top 5 transfer portal spenders in the offseason. Arizona State, I still have as one of the stronger teams in the league. But I mean, most of their toughest games this year are going to be on the road. If you look at their schedule in the conference. So what I was able to do, and you'll see this when I publish my preview, is I was able to create a scheduling matrix, or to find a scheduling matrix that included all these leagues' various tiebreakers. So when I went in game by game by game, I could figure out how these ties were going to be settled. Again, and that's going to be required in a lot of these leagues without divisional play and this much parity. I think Utah is one of my high variance teams. I think if Devin Dampier hits, he's kind of the Damon Williams of the Big 12, although he's a couple years older. But if he hits, then with their defense, I think they could be what Arizona State was in the Big 12 last year.
I believe you dropped a little nugget there that I hit on a few weeks ago. Vegas is telling us something with Nebraska only being a touchdown favorite against Cincinnati.
Yeah, be careful with that one. Yeah, Cincinnati's got an All-American at the defensive line spot in Dante Corleone. The quarterback is is it Hornsby? Is that his name?
Yes.
He's
Source
very
speaks.
underrated.
Yeah.
You know, so that's for a Nebraska team breaking in a whole new DC and a lot of new faces on defense. I just be on the lookout in that game.
Yeah, a quarterback who put up decent numbers in the Big Ten
Yep,
at Indiana.
Yeah.
And then we finish up with the SEC here, and most people love Texas and Georgia waging war. But yes, Alabama's number one in your rankings.
Yeah, I was the thing with Texas is they're not really returning a lot, but they're bringing a lot in. So you're really asking a lot of these pieces to mesh. I think their schedule is tougher than it was last year. I mean, listen, I still have them as an absolute top 10 team if you look at this power rating, which is where a top 3 team in the SEC would be. But I this idea that they're like number one in all the magazines because they deserving of some consensus status, Mark, I just don't see that. I just don't. And I'll put my money where my mouth is accordingly when my win total best bets come out here, you know, in a matter of days. I'm going to be on the under 10.5. Texas is a best bet. I think it's way more likely they're 9-3 than 11-1. Way more likely.
Our buddy Nick says, Steve, I got 10-2 for Michigan. Michigan beats Oklahoma.
I think that's a really tough spot for Michigan. I think that Oklahoma's, you know, remember how the Michigan Notre Dame game when we were kids, Mark, where if Notre Dame lost, they would usually have an underwhelming season. Where Michigan could lose that game and still, you know, reboot in the Big Ten. That game was such an early barometer for Notre Dame of what the rest of its season was going to be. It usually had a hard time having great seasons the same year it lost to Michigan when we were growing up. I think given the pressure on Oklahoma as a program, I think that's what that game is for them. I think it's an absolute circle the wagons. And that's a tough spot, I think, putting a freshman quarterback on the road in prime time. I think that's a tough spot for Michigan.
Steve, we're really testing your memory here because obviously there's a zillion categories and a zillion teams. But Matthew was asking about Texas special teams being the worst. They brought in the Texas State kicker. He was 30 of 34 the last 2 years.
Yep. So special teams, I have learned over the years, Mark, that is the absolute hardest thing to project. So this year I decided I'm not going to. So my special teams ratings are reflective of what Bill Connolly's SP Plus is projecting will be the special teams ratings at the end of the year. And so in SP Plus, remember, we're comparing Texas not against the country, but just the teams on their schedule. Okay. So Texas was one of the more improved special teams units in SP Plus. I think they were still top 40, top 50, which is not bad at all. But there were so many other SEC teams in that rating there that they were actually, if we're just comparing them within their own conference, that's why they were last.
So, Steve, we appreciate your time. Michigan podcast, everyone. I'm going to leave you with 2 teams. If you can comment on 2 of the curious teams in the SEC for me, LSU, Oklahoma.
So I think the 2 most overrated teams in the preseason, according to my power ratings, are both in the SEC, Texas and LSU. And you tell me who typically has a great season, Mark, with like no offensive line starts returning. That's not typically how this works, brother. Okay. And week 1, they're going to go play a team that may have, you know, the single best defensive lineman in all of college football on its roster, and Peter Woods, and maybe a couple other top 100 NFL draft picks. I don't get the LSU stuff at all. I don't. When I say that, I mean, I could see them being a playoff team, but I think Lindy's has them 5th in the country. No way. I mean, my power ratings say no way. I mean, I don't see it. I just don't. And I feel the same way about them in Texas, the 2 most overrated teams. And now overrated doesn't mean I think they suck, but, you know, I don't think Texas is anywhere near being number 1 in the Athlons magazine. And I don't think LSU is anywhere near being number 5 in the Lindy's magazine, completely rebuilding its offensive line against the caliber of schedule it will then go on and play.
Our buddy Phil Steele goes LSU number 4 in the SEC.
That's way closer to where I am. I have LSU 6th. the 6th best team in the SEC is what I have.
Yeah, I don't know where they are. I can't find his national rankings, but regardless, yeah, a little bit closer to what they've been under Brian
that's
Kelly.
Probably a top 15 team. Okay.
Sure.
But Lindy's number 5. Now, here's the thing. Because of what I said earlier about how much the talent is spread out amongst the top tier of teams in college football now, dude, you are one injury, one turnover away from being that team and, counting how many guys are sitting out your bowl game. You know what I'm saying? So that is a world we kind of have to get used to now. That's the world we're in now.
Steve Deace, Michigan podcast. Also, the Bigger 10 for you Big Ten fans that want to hear Steve and Aaron's analysis on the entire conference. Steve, always great to have you. We get you here as many times as we possibly can and would love to see you sometime before August camp or somewhere in that range.
You bet. With a shout out to an assist from StreamYard and their 17-factor authentication system, I am sure. You bet. Yes.
So I will look into something else just for you, Steve. We'll look into something else, see if we can make something else. Zoom or somebody else is out there, I'm sure.
All right, man. Have a good 4th, everybody. God bless.
The one and only Steve Deace, again, Michigan podcast, and what he does during the day concerning social issues, politics, and our culture is even more impressive in my book. But we love to hear Steve's take. And he takes a very analytical approach to all of it, as I do. And I guess I'll be showing up on Michigan podcast myself at some point here somewhat soon, I do believe. All right, folks, we do appreciate it. I'll drop the call-in line here in the chat. My day consists of pickleball and consists of the On the Move show is coming up tonight at 8:30 Eastern time. So I'll be back after pickleball to talk recruiting with you. Leanne Herring, of course, our recruiting analyst specialist, the best when it comes to what we do here, the Voice of College Football, regarding recruiting. So Leanne and myself, 8:30 Eastern tonight, we will take your calls. We'll take your calls concerning anything about college football. But of course, Leanne will give us the intel on just the plethora of commits across the country over the last 10 days or so. So join us for the On the Move show. Check out the video that I posted, 2 of them today already. Man, I'm hard at work. 2 videos already today. One says simply my dumbass predictions. Second video, my Texas prediction, which seems to be fairly in line with Steve. Not just feeling as though Texas is just going to run rampant through the SEC, but still be competing for a national championship. So my predictions are continuing to come out over the next few weeks, folks. You can look forward to these things. The Big Ten Live Show is back. Myself, Corey Brada, we will name day and time soon, but the Big Ten Live Show is coming back the week of Big Ten Media Days. My all-time program rankings, we've released the Big 12. We're going to release the rest. We're going to have live streams for you to respond to my all-time program rankings. And those, I don't just spit at the fan or spit at the wall or throw darts. It's all broken down by categories: winning percentage, major bowl wins, bowl victories, conference championships, NFL players, all of it. Okay. Then we also will go through the national championships. We're going to go through every year. If I have to sit here for 15 hours on a live stream, we are correcting national championships. We have started this in the past. I got bogged down sometime in the 1970s, but we're just going to start over, run through it. 2020, every year is on the board. Now, am I going to be taking away national championships during the college football playoff era? No, I'm not doing that, but I will bring light to some of the context and some teams that got ripped off. Florida State 2023, no opportunity to win a national championship. Now, am I going to award Florida State a national championship in 2023? Of course not. No, I am not awarding them a national championship. We are going to have footnotes, though, to these seasons Let me show you what I got thus far. Just to make a footnote that in certain situations, there should be some considerations, or a footnote to history would be, you know what? In 2023, Florida did everything they possibly could to win a national championship. They were undefeated and ACC champions, but they didn't get a chance to win a national championship. So that's not fair. Now, again, I'm not going to award Florida State a national championship in 2023 because they would have had to win 2 playoff games, and we didn't come close to anything in that realm of seeing Florida State defeat the 2 type teams that they would have had to. Just again, a footnote to 2023 in particular. Let's see what I got here. I went back to 1974. I don't know what I got here. Anyway, the rest of it's on another grid. So anyway, we'll do the stuff that I love to do, and I hope you love it as well. We are going to, again, recount, revisit, review, and reward and take away national championships from year to year because they're screwed. They suck. They're wrong in many cases. And then also, again, all-time program rankings. I'm going to continue to churn out my predictions. Thank you for watching those. So we appreciate you being here at the Voice of College Football. And again, we're getting excited about the show that we're going to do with Corey Bratta, the Big Ten live show. And I believe that's going to be on Tuesdays, but we'll see. We will present that to you, Corey and myself, the Big Ten live show. We're going to bring on some great guests. Again, solid Big Ten analysis. Corey and myself, and you, of course, contributing. Please like and subscribe here at the Voice of College Football. We appreciate you being here. We're going to continue to bring in the best guests that we can find. And in the meantime, you put up with me and my analysis. So thank you for being here. Is there anything else left in the chat that I need to hit on? I do not believe. We do have a call coming in. Do I take it? Do I take it? It's not connecting. We had one Christopher Foote attempting to call in. Chris, if you can call in, I will take your call. Going once, going twice, going 3 times. You will see me tonight at 8:30 Eastern. So, Chris, you can call back then. 8:30 Eastern. Leanne Herring and myself. On the Move is the recruiting show. Again, it's going to be all recruiting in terms of what we're talking about. But you can call us about anything concerning college football. On the Move. It's at 8:30 Eastern tonight. All right, folks. Good show. Glad to see everybody show up. I'll be back here. You know what? It is the 4th of July. I've got plans tomorrow. Maybe we'll do an early show. Seems as though my plans are going to be a little bit later. Just hit the bell for the notifications to know when we go live. We will most likely do a show on the 4th, but not at 4 p.m. Eastern time. Okay. That is a Friday. Yes. And then, man, I got to get to work on these program rankings and also this national championship deal. So we will. Hard at work. It's basically the season. We're in full go here at the Voice of College Football. Full go. Great to see you all. And thanks for being here. We'll see you at 8:30 Eastern. And a happy 4th to you, Drufus. Thank you so much for the contribution. We appreciate that. And while we're still hanging on here, disputed national champions. Don't take my word for it. Read the reviews on Amazon. Also, we've gotten a zillion more reviews here. So anybody that's actually given us a review here, 50 to 100 people easily, please go to Amazon and give us the review there because it really helps the circulation of the book. But thank you for everyone, about 500-600 people that have purchased this book. So thank you for that selection. But we need to sell a bunch more. Somebody had asked me about doing one for the 2000s, also doing one for the 1980s. If this baby sells, I loved writing this book. Loved it. I would love to write more. I would take your suggestions on how to improve it for the next edition, which would most likely be either the 1980s or the first decade of the 2000s. So Disputed National Champions, you can look it up on Amazon or just grab the link down in the description section down below. See you at 8:30 Eastern.